Hey there, fourth grade. It's Mr. Remedies back with another reading mini lesson from Fontes and Pinnell. This week we're talking all about how nonfiction texts are organized. Last week we talked a little bit about how they featured some things and how we could talk about their main ideas and whatnot. But today we're looking exactly how they are organized. All right, so we're taking our reading skills up a notch, and I think you guys are more than capable of doing that. Specifically today, we're talking about how nonfiction authors use and share information in time order, just like a story. All right. So, as always, let's dive into our learning goals and success criteria and then really take a deeper dive into today's lesson. As always, we have some learning goals, success criteria. Today, guys, we are learning to notice when an author uses, big words, narrative text structure to share information in chronological order. Oh, whoa, those are some big old giant words, some big old academic words. So we're going to have to break them down a little bit. Along that way, we have some success criteria that help you know you're being successful to reach this big old goal of ours today. 3 statements today. I can define narrative text structure. Pretty good idea that we do that. I can define chronological order, which I know this isn't the first time we've seen it, but it's always good to review. And number 3, I can recognize how information is organized within a given text. I think if you can hit those 3 bases, wow, we're just knocking it out of the park today. All right, so with our learning goal success criteria out of the way, let's move on to some vocabulary. Boom. Our vocabulary, 2 very important words today. First term, narrative text structure. Right? A narrative text structure is a way to organize information like a story. Stories are told in a certain order. Okay? Which brings us to our next word, chronological order. Chronological order is arranged according to the time. Right? First, then, next, finally. All right? As long as you keep those 2 vocabulary words in your brain piece today, you'll be A-okay for today's lesson. Now that we have vocabulary out of the way, let's take a closer look at some examples to really explore this idea. Right? So we're going to look at a couple of books that we've read previously, and I want to ask you guys what happens in the book. Let's jog our memory. Right? First up, we had our boy Ivan, The Remarkable True Story of the Shopping Mall Gorilla by Catherine Applegate. Right? So jog your memory. What happens in this book? Maybe if you got Disney Plus out there, maybe you have seen the movie, or you've read the longer book. But remember, what happens in this book? This is a nonfiction text because it is based on a true story. So remember what happens? Ivan is born. He's born in the jungle. He's taken to America. Come on now, what happens after that? He lives in a shopping mall, right? A zoo that was kind of attached to a shopping mall. And then, through a series of amazing events, he is taken from that shopping mall zoo and lives in a proper zoo. Right? So this is an example of a true story, a nonfiction text, but how's it told? It's told in order of the things that happen. It's told in chronological order. All right, let's see what else we have for an example. Our next example comes from One Plastic Bag. Now, I know this may have been a while, but what kind of information was presented in this book? What happens in this nonfiction text? Remember that Isatu's basket breaks right at the beginning of the text. What happens in the middle of the story? She starts to use plastic bags, but remember, she notices the problems caused by all those plastic bags. So how does the story end up? What does she end up doing? Boom, she crochets purses out of the old plastic bags and then ends up selling them in order to buy more goats for her community. Right? So what did you notice about the way this information in this nonfiction text is organized? Is it organized by the type of information? Or is it organized in chronological order? We might be onto some sort of pattern here. Let's take a look at our final example. What happens in our final example? What happens in Parrots over Puerto Rico? Think back to that. It's been a little while, but remember, we learned all about how uh, thousands of parrots live in Puerto Rico and they've been there for thousands of years, but humans nearly caused the parrot's extinction for a number of different reasons. But it's safe to say that human interaction, human behavior, nearly causes those birds to be extinct. So, what happens after that? Do you remember at the end of the story or the end of the text? Boom. There's a lot of information about how people start to help the parrots in order to survive instead of going extinct. So we're beginning to see a real pattern here that in all three of our examples today that this information was told much like a story. It was told in chronological order, which is the order of time in which the events actually happen. So what does it all mean? What does it all mean? I think we can come up with a very good kind of definition for this term and kind of notice a pattern that when I have information and I add a chronological order to that information, boom, we call it narrative nonfiction. So the three examples today, Ivan, one plastic bag, and Parrots over Puerto Rico, we consider those narrative nonfiction. They're presenting information to us that is factual, it is true, but they're just presenting it like a story in order for it to be more entertaining and more engaging to the reader, more interesting to us as we read the text. So I think this is a pretty good pattern to recognize. Now, let's move on. Boom. All important review. All right. So, as a review, guys, remember we're studying all about how nonfiction is organized this week. So, nonfiction is going to be organized in a variety of ways. Spoiler alert, not the first time we're going to talk about this week. All right. Second point to remember, nonfiction is often organized in narrative text structure. Right? And as you guys learned at the beginning of this lesson, narrative text structure is a way to organize information in chronological order like a story. First, next, then, finally. Right? Then we also know that when informative texts are structured like stories, we call them narrative nonfiction. Right? They have a specific name because they have a specific function, structure, and organization. All right. As always, I've been Mr. Remedies. You guys have really knocked this lesson right out of the park, and I'm so proud of you guys. As you read today, try to pick out a nonfiction text and see what you notice about how the information is organized. Is the book you're reading today via Epic, is it a narrative nonfiction? All right. As always, you've been amazing, and we will see you down the road. Ripple outro. Ooh. Adios, guys.